time. Can everybody hear that in the back? Okay, want to make sure. People like to rock, some people like to roll. Everything gonna set us on my soul and If I'm wrong, someone can correct me, but I think I was the first girl to do rock and roll.
Honky Tonky Joe is knocking at the door. Bring him in and fill him up and sit him on the floor. Let's have a party.
She was first the grand lady of rockabilly and rock and roll.
But Wanda is absolutely the first woman to do it.
God almighty, she dated Elvis Presley, you know. I mean, how cool can you get, you know?
It's like I was in the middle of a hurricane, and I was just trying to hang on and stay with the guys, you know, and do this type of music.
And she actually became the first gal to ever record rock and roll.
I couldn't believe a girl could sing like that. She was like a female Little Richard back then, you know.
And that's the kind of stuff I put on my tour bus when I want to get in the mood to play.
It does take embracing a certain amount of aggressiveness that, particularly in the 50s, it might not have been considered, you know, ladylike.
Growl! Yeah, the growl, and I think Elvis took some of that growl.
The guys shouldn't have it all wrapped up themselves. Let the girls get in the mix here.
What's rockabilly?
Rockabilly is,
it's a prototype of punk and garage music.
It was a mixture of country music and early rock and roll.
Well, where did the word come from? Well, I don't know. Where do other words come from? It just drops out.
Well, rockabilly music is sort of a forerunner and a parallel stream to rock and roll, and the billy part of it refers to hillbilly.
Rockabilly can be different. It can be a shuffle.
A mixture of rhythm and blues and country on like a form of steroids.
So it's really rhythm and blues and gospel under rockabilly, gluing rock and billy together, I think.
That's what happened when country and blues met.
And that's what caused it to evolve, you know, from...
We always loved it because it came with a built-in lifestyle. It came with a built-in look and a built-in kind of way to live almost. Most of the people who are into this music like the whole lifestyle. Old cars, a certain way of dressing, a certain, like you want to have a leopard skin couch and jukebox in your house. It was like a lifestyle, you know, like a style.
And it's such small resources, really. There's not a lot of volume. It's all coming from the voice and the dynamism of the actual performer.
I'm an old poor boy, long way from home.
Looking back on it now, you realize that there was a huge amount of possibility in the music that suddenly exploded.
My dad was a professional musician. He played in a band. He played fiddle and guitar and sang at dances in little towns around Oklahoma. And it was at one of those dances he met my mother. and they courted for a while and were married, and a while later on I came along. We'd listen to the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday nights, and also Mother and Daddy loved to dance. They were beautiful dancers, and so every weekend there would be some big bands. Well, they would go dancing with their friends. And it seems strange now, but in those days people didn't get babysitters. You just took your kids with you. But they said they never knew I was around because I'd head right to the bandstand and stand there all night, looking up at the singers. And I loved it. And so they could tell from an early age. They would ask me, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I said, I'm going to be a girl singer. And so my dad put a guitar in my hand when I was about 6, and eventually I could make some chords, and then I would play guitar, he'd play fiddle, and we'd sing together, almost every night. And so those are wonderful memories. Now this is my original guitar, the first real guitar I had. This is a Martin D18, and I loved it. This is what I wanted at the time, but I knew that I couldn't afford a brand new one. So my daddy and I went shopping in downtown Oklahoma City at the pawn shops. And bless his heart, he found this, and it was in perfect condition. It was. One of the first songs, let's see, that I learned and probably sang on this guitar was Got the blues like midnight, moonshine and bright as day. Lord, Lord, I got the blues like midnight, moonshine and bright as day. I wish a tornado would come and blow my blues away. The old lady, oh lady, oh lady.
WPGC time. Well, of course, early days, the afternoon was filled with live radio performances by either local or national stars. And when I was growing up, it was all country and western. Mainly people like Eddie Arnold, who was a huge star at that time. And so radio was so important in those days. It's become homogenized now. But in those days, between not only showcasing the records of whoever was an emerging talent at the time, but also the fact that these guys locally that had shows, anybody who was in town wound up on the show because that was content.
You know about it.
When I was in junior high school, the radio station that was most popular had a 1-hour country music show. And the last 15 minutes of it, he would let local talent sing. So you would have to try out, and if you were good enough, he'd let you sing that last 15 minutes.
She was telling me about this one time where she was stomping her foot on the base of the mic stand, and her parents were saying, when you go on the radio, there's this really funny thumping sound, and it doesn't happen when anybody else is on their show. And they figured out, she didn't realize she was doing, but she was keeping time and banging her foot against that.
I've got a Humpty Dumpty heart. You dropped it and broke it apart. All the king's horses, all the king's men could never put it together again. But when I gave to you my heart, you said
I was influenced by, all of these stars. But Hank Thompson is the one that I really loved his way of singing and his beautiful songs. And so I was a very big Hank Thompson fan.
I'd heard about her, and so she was on a radio station, and I tuned it in and heard her singing, and I said, boy, this girl is punning good.
And lo and behold, they told me one afternoon, they said, Wanda, you've got a call as soon as my show was over. I said, who is it? And they said, well, I don't know. It's a man. A man must be Daddy.
Asked her, would she like to come up and sing a couple of songs with my band? And she says, well, I'll have to ask my mother.
Hank Thompson calling me, It's still the moment that was probably the most thrilling thing of my life.
Well, that would figure, because here she was, just a teenage girl still going to high school and picking the guitar, and then somebody like me who was nationally known and hit records, and so I could see where she was highly flattered.
And he asked me to come down and sing that coming Saturday night with the Brazos Valley Boys at the Trianon Ballroom. I thought, man, I've hit the top now. So I was ready to go on the road. I didn't give college or anything a second thought. I was on my way doing what I wanted to do. I think what was so neat is that my dad was being able to live his dream through me. My daddy was going to try to book me, and he didn't know anything. I mean, he was a barber. And he got a billboard, though, and was thumbing through it, and he just saw the name Bob Neal, and he was in Memphis. So, well, that sounds good. So he called him, told him he was my father and that we'd like to tour, and could he set some dates for me. And Bob Neal said, as a matter of fact, that'll be great. He said, I'm booking a young man named Elvis Presley, and he's really starting to cause a commotion, and on his shows, I'd like to feature a girl on the bill. And so he said, let's try that. So it wasn't unusual at all for me to work a show and be on the bill with Johnny Cash, Buddy Holly, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, all these greats. They weren't superstars then, but they were my buddies, and we had a lot of fun on the tours, and it was great.
It was Elvis that encouraged her so much and had confidence in her ability to do rock and roll, his kind of music. And Wanda said, I'm a country artist. And Elvis said, well, I am too, basically. But here's what we do different. And he showed her. He showed her you can take different kinds of music. And he took a lot of black blues from the old days and put a rock and roll rhythm to it, and it worked.
I had already been recording for at least a year. I'd had 2 country songs in the Billboard Top 50 or something. My first record got up to number 10 or something. So, you know, for about that long, I was a bigger star than Elvis. It didn't last long.
So at the time, what Wanda was doing was really, risking her career. She was going from country into rockabilly. She didn't know if it was going to be acceptable. Probably TV shows didn't want to book her because they were concerned.
Country music is always Sunday morning, and
polite.
hardcore rockabilly is always wild Saturday night.
So really, it was a commitment that she had to herself of, this is the kind of music I want to play for myself, and they were really creating the foundation of rock and roll. Artists like Wanda Jackson laid the roots for contemporary pop music.
Rock you, baby, all night long. Take me in your arms and whisper love and rock you, baby, and don't be slow.
I had a crush on him, and we dated, and he gave me his ring and asked me to be his girl, and we had a very special relationship.
It's a real diamond. Not too big, but it's real.
Wanda always talks about her relationship to Elvis. Everyone wants to know about her relationship to Elvis. And she speaks of it with kind of a twinkle in her eye, and she's got that ring that, she wears around her neck sometimes and keeps at home. And I've always been intrigued by how she presents it, because she doesn't take you into, visceral details, and most people won't ask, And I think if they do, she'll dance around. I think that suits her persona, which is on one hand that sensuality, but on the other hand the ladylike. And you know, as the old country song, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors. I think there's something sweet and mysterious about her relationship to Elvis, and so it shall remain from my point of view, and that fits who she is.
He took me to his home and took a whole afternoon. We played records, and he picked up the guitar and said, you can kind of do it like this. And you know, he took that much time, and he just wouldn't take no for an answer. So it took me a couple of years, but I finally said, well, I'm going to try it. This is for you, Elvis. And sure enough, I just found a home. I mean, I really found my niche.
Some people like to rock, some people like to roll, but moving and a grooving's gonna satisfy my soul. Let's have a party. Let's have a party. The rest sitting to the score. Let's buy some more. Let's have a party tonight.
Rock and roll, when it hit so big, and it just turned the music industry upside down. And here I was right in the middle of it. It's like I was in the middle of a hurricane.
It was so edgy, and there was something when it first came out that made everyone move and rebel.
It made their parents hate their children for a start, you know, which is always required learning, you know, like, turn that rubbish down, you know, that's always what you want to hear from your parents, you know. Otherwise the music's no good if they don't say that, you know.
All right, let's go!
I know the evil feeling that you feel when you sing. I know the lost position that you get into and the beat. Well, if you talk to the average teenager of today and you ask them what it is about rock and roll music that they like, the first thing they'll say is the beat, the beat, the beat.
I never kissed the bear, I never kissed the goose, but I can shake a chicken in the middle of the room. Let's have a party.
In 1956, Let's Have a Party made her the first gal to ever record rock and roll.
I think she has her own style, which I think even Elvis probably fed off of a little bit too.
When they finally accepted Elvis, that was hard enough.
And let alone Little Richard and Jerry Lee, the really wild ones.
So to have a woman do that was unacceptable.
So, yeah, it was quite a shock, I believe.
The shock factor is really an attitude. It's an attitude on stage and how you perform and how you communicate with an audience.
I'll have to admit, I kind of like being a shock. I've always wanted to be a more assertive person. I wanted to have a lot more self-confidence, and I never did have that. But then when I can step on the stage is my kingdom, and I ruled.
Give her a real town hall party welcome. Wanda Jackson, how about
The town hall party DVDs have been out, and you know that's the kind of stuff I put on my tour bus when I want to get in the mood to play. I'll put on an edition of Town Hall Party before the show. Gets you ready to play. You know, it's so rocking. It's not, you know, it's unreasonable.
Everyone on the East Coast on this tour, everyone's saying, have you worked at the Asbury Lanes? Well, no, I haven't. Well, you're gonna love it. That's what we've heard.
But I opened the newspaper and I said, oh my God, I said, Wanda Jackson.
Well, we've been talking about her.
Going to be in Asbury Park. This is like, it's a confluence of, you know, the stars are lining up. And even so, we're so lazy. We go, you know, the kids, you know, we still got, they're relatively young. We put them to bed, the whole thing. But I says, Patty says,
you were very good.
Yeah, I says, no. I says, we gotta go.
And it's always surprising when you meet a star who's someone that you've revered and you've loved, and you think of them as being like the pinnacle of what they do, and then they say, you know, I've got to be there because I've never this is my favorite.
Well, he cut the little advertisement from the paper and put it above the phone and goes, "We're going out. Look what I found. She's coming to town."
This
We
night.
were excited.
This night. And so it was fun, and of course she's a doll.
Let's just do another song for Bruce Springsteen. I'm just happy to be here. Tom, do you know that one though, Bruce? He says that just a little bit more of it he needs, okay? People like to rock, some people like to roll. Living in a groove ain't gonna satisfy my soul, let's have a party.
And we were ecstatic the night she played in Asbury because she was still so good.
Her voice is just so gorgeous, so entitled.
And she also did some impossible things. One, she covered Elvis song.
I'm gonna rock away all the blues. I heard the news. It's been rocking tonight.
That's impossible. That's so hard to do. And she really did make them her own. There's an authenticity in the voice that conjures up a world, a very distinct and particular place in time. It's not something that can be developed, and it's so specifically American.
There's no one that good anymore. Like these people like Wanda Jackson, Gene Vincent, Johnny Cash, they're true characters. True American characters. These are American people. Wanda Jackson couldn't be from England or from Canada or anywhere else. Neither could Johnny Cash. These are American people.
In England, we didn't know anything about us because you couldn't find anything out about people then. I mean, for the first 3 weeks of hearing him, I thought Little Richard was white, because I thought everybody was white, And then, obviously they weren't, but we didn't know that in England because we didn't have a lot of black people there then, so we were dumb, So we didn't know that black people started rock and roll, and of course we found out later. We got rid of Bill Haley, and we found out the good stuff,
You ain't nothing but a hound. When Snoopy round the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. When Snoopy round the door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna be you know.
To me, all those women who were not paying attention to the rules of femininity, of what is acceptable feminine picture that you're supposed to make. And certainly like Big Mama Thornton, all the blues singers, and Wanda, took it to where it was liberating, and she was celebrating all those things that a lot of people were repressing.
The rise of rhythm and blues, or race music after World War II, is really where we get our real energy. You find young blacks coming back from World War II, more leisure time, greater expectations. You've got the precedence of vocal groups like the Ink Spots and the Mills Brothers, all recording in the 30s and 40s being very popular, but largely having a white audience with a black crossover element. So during that period, you've got a lot of exciting music that has a very seductive content that's much more interesting and alluring than things like "How much is that doggy in the window?"
How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail.
And there weren't any girls singing, so I had to sing all these guys' songs. Sometimes it would sound kind of funny, I guess, but that's the way I did it.
Samson told Delilah, loud and clear, I keep your cotton-picking fingers off my curly hair. Oh yeah, ever since the world began.
I never did try to sound like anybody. I mean, my daddy wouldn't have allowed it. He'd say, no, you be yourself. He was a stickler on that. You do it your way, and don't let anybody change it.
And a hard-headed woman is a thorn in the side of a man.
Well, Wanda Jackson is the sweet girl with the nasty voice. She's got that growl in there.
Yeah, the growl, and I think Elvis took some of that growl, because even if you listen to the earlier Elvis, the Sun Sessions, they didn't have the growl as they did like in, 56, 50, up to 58.
She kind of made it safe for people later on, like Janis Joplin, to come around. There was no women that I knew of at that time who sang that aggressively.
Well, you gotta rock your baby all night long. 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 Take me in your arms and whisper low, then rock your baby and don't be slow. Birdies.
It didn't hurt my throat. I've done it all these years, 50 years now, of recording and doing personal appearances, and my voice is still okay. It's strong, and I'm told.
You really can't compare her voice to anyone else. Since Wanda Jackson made records, now you can compare, oh, she sings like Wanda Jackson. You know exactly what they mean.
I couldn't believe a girl could sing like that. Especially back then, you know, it was like not very common for a girl to sing like that in those days, you know. She was like a lot more modern than women were back then, you know. Because she didn't mind letting it all go, you know, the vocals. I mean, unbelievable vocals. She was like female Little Richard back then, you know.
I was the first girl in country music to wear sexy clothes. At that point, I was wearing just Western clothes. I had on cowboy boots and a Western shirt with the piping, you know, and all. And I even had a hat on the back of my head. But I knew that I didn't feel good in those. But it took until I was about 16, probably, and wearing high heels, for me to get the idea, I don't have to dress like this. I can wear heels and a straight skirt, which I always look better in because I'm short. And I don't have to have all this trappings. I didn't like it. So Mother being a professional seamstress, from there we just got my own style. And I had this lower cut dresses, spaghetti straps, the silk fringes rather than that leather fringe, long shiny earrings. And I was a big fan of Marilyn Monroe, and, you know, in that day, and I wanted to look glamorous or sexy, I guess, and that was our way of doing it. And as it's turned out, that changed the look of women in country music, so I'm glad I was able to do that.
I just love looking at the album covers, to be honest with you. We grew up in New York, and there were no girls that looked like that in New York, and she was gorgeous. And then obviously you hear her sing, and then it's all over. She's one of a kind.
That women's empowerment is embodied in her. That empowerment that women really want for themselves. They want to be able to get out there and say, you know, I'm gonna do it with all my heart and soul, with no restrictions, no limitations, because that's what she did. She did what she liked. She did what she wanted to do, and made no apologies for it.
Women certainly admire her for what she's done, because at the time she was doing things that weren't really acceptable, and she wasn't willing to compromise. So again, it was a real statement that she made musically and, you know, artistically. So I think a lot of people respect that, especially women, and realizing how hard it was at that time as well.
I just wish I had a decent kitchen.
It was a time when a woman, even of age, wasn't supposed to be out there much doing the kind of stuff she was doing, and never mind somebody who was under 21.
Furthermore, a kitchen phone at hand when friends call up to chat a bit.
It does take embracing a certain amount of aggressiveness that particularly in the 50s, it might not have been considered, you know, ladylike or whatever. But if you trace that down to, say, Chrissie Hynde, or you can easily trace it sort of down to the great modern women rock singers.
I don't think you see an emergence of as many female artists in this music until you get up until the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Without the Wanda Jacksons of the world in the 50s, certainly the role of female singers in rock and roll would be different. They all owe a piece of their careers to her.
I think she was sort of a real feminist before her time,
And not just the way she dressed, of course, but the content of her songs.
This is a real crazy song. Doesn't make much sense, you know. Doesn't tell much of a story, or doesn't have much of a tune to it or nothing. It's anybody who'd write a song like this would have to be crazy, I'm telling you. Anyway, I wrote this song and it goes. I love a mean, mean man who lives uptown. When I want him most, he's not around. He's a mean, mean man. Woo, Lord, he's a mean, mean man.
Well, I wrote a lot of songs in the beginning because there weren't any girls' songs being written by anyone else, and I kind of like gave them permission to jump in there. The guys shouldn't have it all wrapped up themselves.
Lord, he's a mean, mean man. I'm talking about you. He's a mean, mean man, but I love him all I can. Here we go now, yeah.
Wendell is her husband and manager, and he sets up all her dates, gets everything together, the tours and all that stuff. I know he gave up a nice career in his previous job to manage Wanda.
Wendell had a wonderful career going for him in computers, and he was with IBM. But I gave him the choice of which career because I knew it would never work, both of us trying to do separate things. He said he thought my career looked a lot more interesting.
Our relationship has been successful because we don't compete. I take care of business and everything for her, and she does the same. And she's on stage, I'm off, and there's no competition. And many marriages don't last in show business or country music or whatever because there's competition.
He was dating my best friend, another country singer, beautiful gal named Norma Jean. So I was working all the time, but I would come in and call her. Say, let's go out, let's go have a dinner or something. Well, I've got a date with Wendell. I said, well, heck. I didn't have any other girlfriends. All of them were married and gone, you know. I said, well, ask Wendell if I can come along with you. I mean, I'll pay my way. Just ask him if I can go.
She said, I want you to meet my best friend. And I said, okay, we will. She said, she's a singer, too. She's Wanda Jackson. And I said, oh, that's good. I'd never heard of Wanda Jackson, even though she was a major artist in the country field.
Wendell was a pretty popular guy about that time. You know, he had a blonde on one arm, brunette on the other, so.
I was really impressed with Wanda. She was a knockout. Norma Jean was too, but I don't know. Wanda was about the prettiest, sexiest thing I'd ever seen.
She got the opportunity to go to Nashville and be on the Porter Wagner show, which was a very good deal for her. And when she left, she said, Wanda, take good care of Wendell. Said, he's kind of new in the area. I don't think he has very many friends.
And a week after she left, Wanda called me and said,
why don't we go bowling tonight? And, well, okay, why don't we?
We talked about Norma Jean for about 5 minutes, and then we started talking about us, and we started dating. Of course, I think I was already in love with her, but we were married 8 months later.
All right, Bangor, are you ready for this? We are in the presence of rockabilly royalty today. This young lady has paved the way for so many female artists to come after her. She was singing songs back in the 50s
that girl singers weren't supposed to sing. And she's had an incredible career coming out of Oklahoma, and she is a member of the International Rockabilly Hall of Fame. Let's let her know what we think about that. Miss Wanda Jackson, the Queen of Rockabilly with the Luster Kings. Make her feel welcome. Wanda Jackson.
She would not be able to do what she does without Wendell.
Takes care of her and takes care of the merchandise, so that gives him a lot of things to do and to work out. So he's not kind of in the shadow, so he's kind of next to her and helps her on stage and does all she needs.
We're all together. We thought you were just awesome.
Yeah, you are.
Like that?
Can I just put you in here and kind of scoot it down? I guess so. Kind of expedite it?
For her, it's great because she has company on the road. Traveling, especially for a woman, is not that easy, and because it's usually a man's business and backing bands and all that, so it's not that easy. And having someone with you can rely on and who takes care of you, especially for a woman in this business, is very important. So I think he's done a great job.
When we were first married, there were problems. Everyone's going to have their problems. Ours was a little bit more so because my husband not being in show business, all this was new to him. And the fact that all of a sudden he's having to share his wife with the world, my time, my energy, and it's just kind of making his head swim. What have I gotten into, you know?
I was an old cowboy from West Texas, and I didn't like sharing my woman with anybody, and I had to share with millions of fans.
So it was causing some problems, and people would ask me about my dating Elvis and things, and he didn't like that either.
I said, I don't want to hear Elvis's name anymore, period.
And I don't blame him. I understood, but I couldn't help it that the people asked me. Well, the reason that we stayed together is because we're in love with each other.
And you have to realize now, we've been married 44 years, and we've been together forever. I mean, since we've been married, I mean together. I'm not talking about like average couple that goes to work, or one of them does, or both of them, and they come home late in the evening. We're together.
My children, yes, we had to leave them. You know, half of their lives we were gone, and they were being reared by governesses. And my mother and Wendell's mother kept them on the weekends.
They were gone a lot, because back then they didn't have just concert dates. They had nightclubs, and, you know, they would have to be gone longer, you know, weeks at a time. It was just what we knew. It was normal for us. I missed them really bad when they would leave, and I would always get a little toy or a figurine, and I'd sneak it in their suitcase while they were packing, so a little bit of me could, you know, go with them.
Gina hated the life and the entertainment business, and she hated to see us leave, and it was hard to leave her.
Well, when everyone found out my mother was Wanda Jackson, they would you'd get preferential treatment. Our teachers were a little more apt to give you better grades. I didn't really use that. My brother, now he went to kindergarten with a signed album under his arm.
It went very far. She was really appreciative of that.
Well, when we traveled with them, we saw how Mom was treated preferentially because she was a celebrity. But by the same token, they weren't home a lot, and I'm sure that was as hard on them as it was, you know, for us.
I would say that I was probably 6 or 7, and I started realizing how popular Mom was, and not realizing the full effect of it at that age, but I did realize that something was different.
By 1971, I'd come to a place in my life where I was realizing that I had everything that I'd ever wanted. But why then was I kind of miserable, just unhappy, kind of searching for there should be more. I'm still missing something. What is it?
Lord, I want to be a Christian in my heart.
When Wanda and I got married, religion was not important to us. We didn't pursue, we didn't even talk about it. They put it way down the list of priorities.
We really enjoyed church, Gene and I did. And so, of course, we wanted to get our parents involved. And anytime they were home, we were constantly asking them if they would come to church.
They were the ones that made us promise to come to church, and they just kept on our backs until we finally said, okay, enough, but we will.
We got there for church, and we went sat in the back of this little church over on the southeast part of Oklahoma City.
I didn't know anything was really happening in my heart or in my head. I was just sitting there listening, trying to be set up straight and do all that.
And it's nothing but an opportunity for those in the crowd that want to make a decision for God. And you step out on the invitation, the choir sings, and people stand, and you step out and come forward.
So everyone stood and began singing, Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior.
As the choir sang, pass me not, O gentle Savior.
And it was just like I heard God's voice, not literally, but in my heart, in my spirit. And he said, Wanda, walk with me.
She said, honey, will you excuse me a minute? There's something I got to do.
And without saying any more, he said, me too. So we took a hold of each other's hand, probably for a little more courage. But we walked down that aisle and took Brother Paul by the hand and said, we want to get right with God.
It's amazing in our lives how God has sort of moved us or touched us, always together. It always has been a beautiful harmony there.
We were born again. And what a wonderful difference God has made in our lives.
Praise God, I couldn't walk, I had to run to meet my Lord.
I began writing gospel songs. I'd never written a gospel song in my life. And I wanted to get out more gospel music.
Welcome to Wanda Jackson Country Gospel.
Maybe looking back, yeah, it was a major decision because we made a lot of money back then.
The star of our show, Wanda Jackson.
Boy, you look pretty today in your red cowgirl outfit, and we know that Jesus does love cowgirls.
We did a faith ministry. In other words, we lived on free will offerings that the church gave us from the services. Never made much money, but I never missed a meal either. And we found out that you can do a whole lot of things with a whole lot less if you try.
I think God just kind of led them into just a change, and that they could be used there as well. I know Mom gives her testimony a lot of times on stage, and that's real important to her.
Oh, but then Jesus came like a stranger in the night, and praise the Lord. I saw the light, 2, 3, 4. I saw the light, I saw the light. No more darkness, no more night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light.
I'd been doing gospel for a good many years. But a man in Scandinavia called. He had a record company, and he was a fan of mine and invited me to come to Sweden to record an album. I want it to be both things that you're known for in our country, and that's country music and rockabilly.
The Queen of Rockabilly! The First Lady of Rock and Roll, Miss Wanda Jackson!
So that just set me right back into the rockabilly, and I began finding all these new generation of fans. It just knocked me out. I said, my gosh, I haven't sang these songs since I recorded them, you know.
Very early '95, I asked Wanda if she would be willing to record a couple songs with me on my Rockabilly Billy record that I was in pre-production for. And she said, do people really listen to this anymore?
That's a good album. Thank you for having it. We'll sign that one for you after a while. I remember the day we took that picture. I was about 18 years old, and boy, they cinched me all up in that garb. They got my 20-inch waist down to about 18. And I said, oh boy, this is great. Now I can't wait to see the dress. They said, there isn't any dress. See, no wonder I got the reputation of being a bad girl. Covering my album with no dress on. And on that tour, I remember every night I was being asked to sing Mean, Mean Man, another song. I wrote the song, and yet I couldn't remember it. So before I left this one town, at the hotel as we were leaving, here came one of the fans. He said, I was at your show last night. Here's the lyrics to Mean, Mean Man. He said, you need to start doing it. We love it.
Could not believe how everybody was dressed up, and the guys had grease-backed hair, and the girls, with their high heels and their spaghetti strap, and were dressing like Wanda Jackson. It was just cute. I think that she missed singing secular music. I think she missed singing those rock and roll songs, Fujiyama Mama, and Mean Mean Man, Hot Dog, Funnel of Love, and she was just so natural coming back into it. I mean, and her voice sounds just as good as it did back then.
It's such a crazy, crazy feeling. I get weak in the knees. My poor old head is a-reeling as I go deep into the funnel of love.
One of my favorites is Funnel of Love. Matter of fact, one time when we were in Allentown, Pennsylvania, she was singing that song, and my wife and I happened to be sitting on the ground in front of her, and she had this little triangle thing, I forget what they call them, and she pulled that out, and she had me do that ding-dong part with the Funnel of Love song, and of course, with my tone and everything, I just kept hitting the thing. I was so shocked just to be that close to Wanda Jackson. I didn't know how to act.
The first time I saw Wanda Jackson live, actually, was in Los Angeles, and I was amazed. I think I was the oldest person in the audience. There was a lot of kids, 18, 20, 21, whatever, young kids who are heavily into her music. And it really amazed me how her audience is always growing and it's always getting younger, as well as the older crowd who've known her historic recordings, but she's definitely reaching a whole new audience.
Audiences abroad have often been better keepers of interest in the traditions than Americans themselves. Some people say we eat our history raw. We kind of grab it, it's popular culture, we forget about it, we throw it out. We're becoming a little more reflective as a people, I think, but the Japanese, the Germans, the Brits, French, they love this kind of thing.
In Europe, there's all these kids all over the place. They're tattooed, they have greasy hair, and they wear 50s clothes, and they think Wanda's like a goddess. They worship her.
There was a nostalgia and appreciation for these artists in Europe, which really wasn't recognized in America. Radio turned off these artists, where in Europe, there was more specialty shows that would support that kind of music, and definitely had a a live circuit, whether it be the rockabilly festivals or blues festivals, that would definitely nurture and support that kind of act. So a lot of acts really look towards Europe as a means of survival. They'd go over there and they'd tour and they'd survive. They would have European labels, put out their product. And really, and for Wanda Jackson, I think, touring Scandinavia has been a major market for her, especially on the live scene.
What does that mean in English? Sold out. Sold out? Yeah.
Wanda and Wendell, her husband, it's the old school approach. It's what they understand. It's getting to an audience. It's about being there, selling your products, signing autographs. It's reaching out to your audience and building that building that loyalty.
And the darker and more run down the place is, the sweeter the people are.
Never went away. It's still huge there. Eddie Cochran, Eugene Vincent, Wanda Jackson, they're household names there. And I think it's the image of America that the rest of the world wants to have. Very innocent, very cool, very big, larger than life. And it's positive. It's a positive image. That's when we went to England in the first place. I was 18 years old, we moved to England, and they already knew what it was. Well, we lived in New York City, and we had to tell them what it was.
My first #1 song was Fujiyama Mama, but it wasn't in America. It was in Japan. And the people still know it today when I go over. They sing it with me, so they really love it, I suppose. But I don't think they understood the lyrics. That's possible. See what you think.
I've been to Nagasaki, Hiroshima too. Same I did to them, baby, I can do to you. 'Cause I'm a Fujiyama mama, just about to blow back out. Fujiyama, yama, Fujiyama. And when I start erupting, ain't nobody gonna make me stop.
But I've been able to work Japan all these years on the strength of Fujiyama Mama.
That's a great record.
That's the Ace one, yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny that they put out first Ace records and then Bear Family came right after that and put...
Yeah, but it was almost about the same songs, but the songs are classics. So.
Yeah.
And I think in Europe it's more of a tradition to keep the old things alive. Like old buildings, old places, they're all kept in shape. And in America, I think it's everything that it's older than a couple of years, it's torn down. You're going to build a new house, make a parking lot. And that's with the music. You go for the newest music and then forget about the old stuff.
But the great thing is that when, styles will change in music and people have to find a new way, and sometimes they have to find a new audience, and sometimes that new audience is somewhere else in the world.
Capitol Records called us and said, we would like for Wanda to record in the German language.
They said, don't worry about any of that. She'll do it phonetically. We'll guide her, and we'll have special songs written for her.
Hardest thing she's ever done in her life. Her first release, Santo Domingo, become #1 in 4 different German-speaking countries.
And now when I sing it, I just get chills because the whole audience sings with me. And they hold up their lighters and sway, with me and sing.
The people recognize her, and the difference in German is because she had those recordings and hits in the German language that made her special in Germany. one time I went to a open air festival in Germany, and she was playing there, and I was going there and looking there, and I enjoyed it a lot. And a few years after, I had a festival and wanted to book her, and we worked out the details, brought her over, and she liked what we did. So since then I do a lot of shows in Germany and Austria and other places like here in Finland. Here we are. Hello. 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 This one action in.
My name is Mike.
Mike, I can say that one too. Thank you.
I would think it's a pretty tiring job to go on tour and have to rely on the band, the level of competence, the level of ability to pick up cues like that and to be instructed, and particularly when you're doing it in another language.
Too lonely, too long, give me accents night. Let's go.
I still think the most important thing is the musicality of an artist like Wanda herself, the ability to adapt to these bands. And I've watched Wanda work with the bands and sort of pull them together, because on any given night, it's obvious, some bands are going to be better than others.
See, you're the only one that sings with me.
We'll do something.
On the same mic? I just need a chord.
The nuances in that music are endless. Whether it's Wanda's records or Howlin' Wolf, you'll find the same degree of subtlety that really makes it fly.
Sometimes it's hard to recognize the early pioneers unless they're, out still selling lots of records. But a pioneer of her type is a real special category.
Hello, everybody.
Go to work.
There were very few of them, and she was a crossover into that world. The few women were a bit marginalized, and they deserve to be recognized, and she first and foremost.
Let's rock, okay?
Let's see, Danny, let's take Good Rockin' Tonight next, okay?
Okay.
John, if you'll play us a little of this.
Wanda is here to do an album which is going to be a tribute to Elvis Presley. Because if anyone can do a tribute rightfully to Elvis, it's Wanda.
I heard the news, there's a good rockin' tonight. But I heard the news, there's a good rockin' tonight. I'm gonna hold my baby as tight as I can. Tonight I'll know he's a mighty, mighty man. I heard the news, there's a good rockin' tonight.
When Cleopatra Records invited me to do this, I thought, well, I don't have to sing it like Elvis because nobody can. I'll just sing it like Wanda Jackson.
So far, it's been perfect.
It's just really fun. His songs, they sound very simple, but I was a little bit shocked when I started learning them. They're a little bit tricky, and you've got to have a lot of breath. And so it was a real challenge for me, but I've had a great time.
Wow.
Right.
That's great.
I thought it was super.
Okay, now, wonderful, wonderful smiles from everyone.
Well, we were so surprised. The president of the NEA, National Endowment of the Arts, called me. It's a presidential award, and there's very, to be honest, there's not one country music girl singer in it, and there's not one rock and roll singer in it, period. One is the first in both fields.
They chose me for my country music, rock and roll, or rockabilly, I'm not sure how they said it, and gospel.
And but that was one of the greatest things that ever happened.
Known as the First Lady of Rockabilly for her contributions to the excellence of early country, rock and roll, and gospel music, the National Endowment for the Arts honors Wanda Jackson.
I think what's wonderful about this award is that, I think something like a Grammy or to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, these are things that artists know about, they're expecting, they're looking for. And this almost seems to drop out of the sky a little bit. But it's such an honor. I mean, it's the highest honor that the federal government bestows upon a traditional artist in the United States.
Don't be afraid to walk here. I know this is sounds so fun.
Yeah, it's going to be real bright like this.
The spotlight will be this bright.
Here's someone who, as a young girl, defied so many notions of what it was that a girl singer is supposed to sing about, or how they're supposed to dress, and who's supposed to be in their band. And here she is now, years and years later, and in many ways she's still defying so many of these conventions as a woman of her age, going around in this sequin dress, looking sexy and just tearing it up like that.
Wanda's worked all these years with so little recognition of who she was and what she really did for country music as well as rock and roll. And this year things are falling together.
A royal pleasure, I might say.
Well, the National Heritage Fellowships of the National Endowment for the Arts honor people in folk, traditional, and I would add vernacular culture. And they look to progenitors, people like Wanda Jackson. And there aren't too many women that were there at the beginning, but she is one of them.
I've noticed that people refer to her also as the sweet lady with a nasty voice. I want you to make her welcome, the sweet lady. She's there, Wanda Jackson.
Well, Wanda's in a lot of different kind of halls of fame. She's in the Oklahoma Country Music Hall of Fame, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. She's in the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. She's in the International Gospel Hall of Fame. And a couple more I probably can't think of offhand, but she's never been considered by the major halls of fame.
Ladies and gentlemen, hey, while I got your undivided attention, Wanda Jackson needs to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All right? Do you all agree with this? Wait, I'm going to get on my soapbox here. Once again, Wanda Jackson needs to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So there's
the Rock and Roll Music Hall of Fame. Should have put her in there a long time ago, because there was never a rock and roll singer before Wanda. Not only is she one of the pioneers, she's also was one of the better pioneers. She was the female Elvis, and she wasn't just a singer, she was the female singer.
I think that it's about time the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame get to it and recognize her, because she was there at the beginning of it.
Sometimes people are too raw for even rock and roll. And I think Wanda Jackson might be that way. I think it's important to give it to the people who are still around. She's still out there working.
If you call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you put all these pop artists in there that have nothing to do with rock and roll or anything, just because the record companies pay them or whatever, I don't know. And then you have real rock and roll rockabilly artists. They should be in there, and especially as long as they're all alive, give them the recognition now and not 10 years after they're gone, because that's what keeps the music alive.
Or change the name of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to Rock Hall of Fame, whatever.
Yes.
But if you're going to have a club like that, you really do have to have Wanda in it. If you're going to have such a thing as a Hall of Fame, then you've got to really acknowledge the people who did it first and continued to do it.
For various artists, we get a lot of letters of support, and that's always important in the nomination process. It's great to see inductees who not only feel that someone should be inducted, but often they'll even write in and say, if it wasn't for so-and-so, I would have never picked up a guitar, I would have never sung.
I know that Elvis Costello has written a very cool letter threatening that they won't get this guitar that they want from him unless it goes right up next to one of Wanda Jackson's guitars.
As such a thing does exist, I believe Wanda should be in it. So this is what I wrote. To whom it may concern, this is to propose that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame finally nominate Wanda Jackson for induction. She was standing up on a stage with the guitar in her hands, making a sound that was as wild and raw as any rocker, man or woman, while other girls were still asking, how much is that doggy in the window? Come on, you guys, do the right thing, induct Wanda. Yours through music.
We're here to celebrate the release of Wanda's brand new CD. A St. Louis newspaper said that Wanda Jackson was there at the creation of rock and roll. Then he said, and for gals with guitars, Wanda Jackson was the creation of rock and roll. And she was. A big hand for the First Lady of Rock and Roll and the Queen of Rockabilly, Wanda Jackson.
Hi, y'all. Nice to be in Hollywood. Wow. Well, it came rolling out of Memphis like a hurricane or a Texas tornado.
Wanda Jackson is not a recycled rock and roll show. I mean, she's exactly who she is. Is she 18, 17 back in those films, those wonderful films? No, of course she's not. But she is very much who she is now, unapologetically, still rocking, and a whole lot of fun to see, and there's nothing retro about it. It's current, and everybody knows it, and that's why there's so many different people come out to see her.
Wow, hi, I
Nice
used
to
to be
meet you.
big. Hi, Lemmy. Nice to meet you.
You too. I bought your first record in 1960.
1960, right or wrong?
Party.
No, party. Y'all know Lemmy? Okay, yeah, he's with a group, Motor what? Motorhead. He said, surely you're doing this song, and I said, well, I hadn't planned to. He said, you've got to. You've got to. He's not paying me. I don't know why I think I have to, but for some reason, he's that kind of guy. Song I wrote from about 1956 or 7, something like this. Danny? I love a mean, mean man who lives uptown. Now on he must, he's not around. He's a mean, mean man. He's a mean, mean man.
I don't think, people see her as an old lady or anything like that. I think they just see her as an amazing person with great energy and a great history, and someone that can still go out there and still perform a lot better than a lot of younger acts, So I don't think anyone perceives her as just someone who's been successful, who's now just doing the circuit. I think she's valid. She's got something to say still, and she's a great performer, and there's nothing wrong with that.
He's a mean, mean man, but I love
My daddy used to say, Wanda, whatever you do it different. Don't get up there and be like everybody else. So to me, that gave me permission to shock people if I wanted to.
I think that's the thing with Wanda. The only way she's ever going to do it was her own way. That was the only way.
I'll always be a fan of Wanda Jackson.
Oh, look at the tattoo on my arm. That's Wanda Jackson. So that's the queen of rockabilly. These young people are dynamite Wanda Jackson fans. They just go crazy over her. Hey, Jackson, I want to thank you for your show. It's incredible. It was really a whole lot of fun.
The way she sings, even in this present day, she's been copied by so many different singers who wanted to be like where Wanda Jackson is.
Not many people left from that time.
It's not just reveling and revering her for what she was. She still delivers.
I have always made a point of seeing as many artists like that as I possibly could. Because you have to go see this. It's our cultural history. It's very important.
Wanda Jackson is not a recycled rock and roll show, and there's nothing retro about it. It's current. I think her day will come in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Stand by.
I think it's just in her blood. You couldn't get her to stay home. It's wonderful to see that. I would have thought she'd been retired by now,
Retirement, yeah, that makes me laugh. One journalist said, after meeting Wanda, I realized that she's a nice lady with a nasty voice. So I don't know if that says it, but that seems to be the image this new generation has of me. So at 68 years old, I'm going to try to do it.